The war on Gaza comes on the 106th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which changed the lives of Palestinians forever. So what was that declaration? Well, for centuries, the Ottoman Empire controlled Palestine until it was conquered in 1917 by advancing British troops during the First World War. The British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour wrote a letter to a prominent member of the British Jewish community saying his government was in favour of the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Well, at that time, only 8% of Palestine's population was Jewish. The letter also said nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. But after the war ended in 1918, the newly created League of Nations mandated Palestine to British control with the language of the Balfour Declaration written in. In 1948, after the Second World War, British occupiers left Palestine. The newly formed United Nations declared the creation of the State of Israel. More than 700,000 Palestinians lost their land. Well, Vincent Fien is a former British Consul General in Jerusalem. He's also a trustee for the Balfour Project charity, which says its mission is to address the UK's responsibility for peace and security in Israel and Palestine. Joins me live from London. Good to have you with us. So, do you agree with those who say that it was the Balfour Declaration that laid the foundation for conflict in the region?
I believe that on this 106th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, that declaration is still alive because its impact is still with us, and it has led to conflict. The document that you read out, the very short promise to the Zionist leader in the UK, says two things. It says a homeland for the Jewish people, but without prejudice to the civil and religious rights of non-Jewish people, which were the majority, as you said. Britain's role in that time was, I would say, a policy of deceit. The Balfour Project charity that you mentioned, that I'm the trustee of, has a website with information, objective information about the British role. We focus on Britain. The website is balfourproject.org. And one of my fellow trustees has written a book, which I commend to your viewers, called A Policy of Deceit, because Britain promised the same land to the Sharif of Mecca before promising it to the leader of the Zionist movement in the UK. And then during the mandate period, the only consistent thing that Britain did was effectively to prevent Palestine becoming an independent state for as long as there was an Arab Palestinian majority therein. That's led to conflict, and it gives Britain a responsibility today to take a lead as a government, as a people, to try to ensure equality between Israelis and Palestinians with mutual security. The idea that unilateral security can be imposed by one people on another through the occupation is wrong, and it's being proved to be wrong tragically as we speak.
Just want to pick up on something you said there. The only effective thing Britain did in that period was preventing an independent state of Palestine to emerge for as long as there was still a Palestinian Arab majority there. Effectively, what does that mean? Denying Palestinians of having a chance at statehood themselves.
This was in imperial times, sadly, and the imperial legacy is still with us. The method used by Britain in that mandate period was essentially to flip and flop between sympathy for the Jewish immigrants, particularly at the time of the Holocaust, and frankly, a lack of sympathy for the national aspirations of the Palestinian Arab people. And the outcome was a mess. Britain left a mess behind, and I feel no pride in that. But turning to now, I think Britain has a responsibility, a duty as a state, as a government, to do several things. To recognize the state of Palestine, which it has failed to do. Britain recognized Israel as a state in 1950, long ago. That recognition stands and will not go away. But the idea of recognizing the state of Palestine, as more than 140 other states in the UN have done, is important. It's important symbolically. It's more than important symbolically. It's important legally, because it means that the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice can rule on the legality of the occupation, 56 years on from 1967, and can investigate alleged war crimes in Gaza and in Israel, both past and present.
All right. Given that everything that you've just described there in the process, ultimately this was a European colonial power promising to give land to a movement which was primarily comprised and led by European non-natives to the land of Palestine. Was this not setting the stage for a colonial project?
I call it imperial. The British themselves, ourselves, did not colonize Palestine. Under our time, more and more Jewish migrants, some driven to Israel by the horrors of the Holocaust, came. And as I said, we flipped and flopped. At one stage, Britain prevented Jewish migrants from landing after World War II in order to try to keep some sort of imperfect balance between the Jewish population and the Palestinian.
Right, but by ultimately handing it over to what was primarily a non-native movement, that led, did it not, to a policy of colonizing?
I think that what we should look at, if I may say, is look at now. What should the British government be doing now? It should be urging its Israeli ally to allow fuel, medicine, clean water, food into Gaza. It should be urging Israel to end collective punishment of the 2.3 million Palestinian people. It should be urging Hamas, through intermediaries like Qatar and Egypt, to release the more than 240 hostages unconditionally. We're all living under the same God. The lives of Palestinians and Israelis are of equal value. That needs to be emphasized. It needs to be said by Israel's partners, and it needs to be said loudly. And I would like that to be said by Tony Blinken when he gets to Israel and the region tomorrow. May I also just add one other point, which was mentioned in your earlier reporting, quite rightly. The risk to Palestinians in the West Bank of displacement is very high. More than 2,000 Palestinians have been displaced since the beginning of this year by settler violence and the silence or even support of the Israeli army. So what can we do about that? In our terms in the UK, we can write to our MPs, we can try to exercise our democratic rights to protest, but also to propose an outcome after this tragic war ends. And that outcome has to be mutual security. It has to be recognition of the state of Palestine by Britain and by partners in the Commonwealth and in the rest of Europe. And it has to mean that we end up in a situation where this tragedy can never be repeated. That means mutual security, but it also means parity of esteem. Parity of esteem from the West for Palestinians and Israelis. And we don't have that today.
All right, thanks so much. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.